back a few weeks ago when it was revealed in a news story on Windows Central that Microsoft was scrapping their plans for a dual screen Surface Duo 3 and going with something more akin to the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold line, a single folding OLED screen with a cover display on the outside. If you listened very closely, you could hear the collective hearts breaking of every Surface Duo user. Now, I shouldn't say every, because some of us have started to come around a little bit and maybe think maybe this might still be okay as a single folding OLED device. But at any rate, a lot of people were very, very disappointed. Now, to make matters even worse, we've learned since then a bit more about what Microsoft's plans were and how far down the line those plans had gotten before making the switch to a single folding OLED screen. And just like I tweeted all the way back in early January when all of this news broke, that might be the worst part, knowing what their plan was going to be. Because if I'm honest, if you had given me full control over the Duo line, it sounds pretty much like what I was going to do. Let's start talking about this, though, by going back to the beginning and talking about the original Surface Duo. This bad boy came out in September of 2020, and it didn't get such great reviews, right? If you remember, a lot of people thought that the hardware was incredible. People loved the way it could fold all the way around. It was super unique. It felt unbelievable, but the software was not very good. The touch response was bad. It was buggy. The camera was terrible. Lots of problems there with Surface Duo number one. Now, for the next year, tons of updates were put out for this thing. It went from Android 10 to Android 11 at some point in there, and it continued to get a little bit better and a little bit better. Of course, there were those fire sales, if you want to call them that, where if it's a fire sale, it must be a coal fire sale because it is still currently burning. But the prices dropped quite a bit very, very quickly. And about a year later, we got Surface Duo 2, which aimed to solve a great many of the problems people had with Surface Duo 1. The biggest one was the lack of a decent camera. So they added this camera array to the back, which gives it a much better primary shooter, a wide angle, and a telephoto lens. Of course, you still have the camera on the inside. We got 90 hertz screens that did get a little bit taller as well. Faster processor, bigger battery, NFC. It kind of tried to tick all those boxes that the reviewers and the people out there who looked at Duo 1 wanted Microsoft to tick. So this is where things get really interesting. What was Microsoft working on after launching Duo 1 and then Duo 2? Well, you would think Duo 3, if we can go back to our Sesame Street days and remember how to count. And you are correct. But there was also one more thing that they were also working on. And we learned about this via this article from Windows Central. A canceled mid-range Surface Duo leaks with dual camera array and plastic exterior. This was a device I had been hearing about for a while. We'd seen it kind of buried in the operating system references to a piece of hardware called Cronus that we didn't quite know what it was, but this was indeed Cronus. This was going to be basically a Surface Duo Go, a plastic exterior, a flat screen, one fewer camera, a mid-range processor, and this device was slated to come out at the end of 2022. So we were going to have 2020, 2021, and then 2022 for the Duo Go. And the purpose of this was so that they could take extra time working on Duo 3, in addition to obviously just having a cheaper entry point for this device. Now, it's unclear how cheap this was going to be because two very large, very custom cut screens, we're not going to let this thing be very, very cheap. This was not going to be $500 or $600 or $700. This was probably going to be coming out MSRP, what, $899, $999? It was not going to be a whole lot cheaper because Duo is just an expensive device to manufacture. But of course, this device would never be released. It was canceled. They were also, though, working at the same time on that Duo 3 that their plan was to take 2 years on, take an extra year, ship Cronus, extra year on Duo 3. And Duo 3 was going to be a dual screened device as well. Rumor has it The bezels were going to get even smaller. It might have actually changed the aspect ratio a bit. Although, if you stay like this, right, and you just make the aspect ratio, or you make the bezel smaller, I should say, you shrink these top and bottom bezels, it's going to make the aspect ratio more skinny. So it's unclear to me exactly how much the screens were really going to change, but it was going to be another iterative release on the Duo line, just like we saw with Duo 2. They were going to try to tick more of those boxes and continue improving the device. Now, I have heard very little about what this device was going to look like, simply that it was a dual screen device. It was supposed to be released in 2023 towards fall, towards the end of the year. And that device also has been canceled. And I really want to take a moment to impress upon you the bizarreness of what the Duo actually is now. This device was the courier concept, and it had been banged around and worked on for a really long time. Like, not like a year or two, like a really long time. The fact that this device, what became Andromeda, and then it lost its operating system and they put Android on it at the last second, the fact that this device ever got released is astonishing. There will be a book written eventually about how this device actually made it into our hands. Okay, so then they make a sequel. They try to, this went from being a Windows device to being an Android device, and so it really wasn't meant to be an Android device. So then they tried to take the Windows device and make it a bit more Android-y and make it a bit more like a phone, because that's where they were going now. And then they made another device and canceled it, and then they made another device and canceled it. Now they're making another device, which is a folding OLED screen. It is by far the most bizarre history for a device, the most ongoing history of a device that I am aware of. And if you're someone like me that really wishes Duo 3 was going to be the Duo 3 that they presumably had almost completed, look how good the Duo Go looked. I mean, this thing looked like it was a fairly complete product at this point. Granted, I don't know how it was going to do, given the fact that it was going to be a Go device that was still going to be very expensive. That's probably why it got canceled. But if you're like me and you were hoping for that Duo 3, that was going to be a dual screen device that they may have gotten very close to completing, all of this might be very, very frustrating to you, because what you are seeing, as I tweeted all the way back on January the 11th, is that it appears that the thing Microsoft was doing, the plan that they had, is kind of the plan that I would have probably had as well, right? Release a slightly cheaper version to kind of make it more accessible, and then release that third model, the third mainline model, I should say, and have it really kind of bring to fruition the full Duo concept, really iron out all the problems. At that point, you will have had all that time to work on the software, and there you go, right? That would have been my plan, but it does feel like they swam halfway, panicked, and turned around and swam back. Like I've already laid out, as crazy as the history of Duo is, this middle bit we're in might be the craziest part. Not only have they devoted the R&D and all the money, we're not talking about chump change, small amounts of money. They've devoted enough money to effectively make 4 hardware revisions to then abandon the course that they're on and go with a folding OLED screen, which is going to, in effect, be another kind of first generation product. That is absolutely insane to me, and there must have been something going on somewhere inside Microsoft to make this sort of thing happen. This is not something that just on a whim someone says, let's just throw all that out and do something totally different now instead. There has to be a really good reason to go that route. Did they just feel like nobody was going to buy a dual screen Duo 3, that it just had no chance of actually making a dent in the market, and that it was either a folding OLED or there was no point continuing? Is that where they found themselves at? Who knows? It's about the best explanation I can come up with. But at any rate, guys, that is kind of what the plan was right up until it wasn't anymore. Guys, thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if that was interesting to you or perhaps frustrating to you. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, man.